Thursday, June 16, 1853. The Bombay Times and Journal of Commerce. The Brooklyn ferry boat from the Liverpool Albion. The following sketch of the ferry boat at Brooklyn, U.S., and of the miscellaneous company who daily crowd its deck is from the pen of an American writer. Ferry boats are among the great institutions of our country, and I patronize them liberally. In them you may behold a gallery of human nature, a fraction of the great world in parenthesis, a mass of beings articulate yet silent, having passions yet governed into subjection by a shovelful of coals and the tinkling of a bell. And then, I think, how like it is that these folks so elaborate in their best bibs and tuckers, how like it is, I say, that these fair creatures and complacent men would, if they were left together for one brief week, be at each other tooth and nail, scandalizing, demoralizing, and wretchedizing themselves and their neighbors. I love to feel the breath of the old ocean as he pants up the bay with the morning flood at his heels. I love to see the sun triumph over the jealous vapors of night. I love to see the hills awaking from their heavy slumbers and like jolly gods kick the drapery of dew from their feet. I love to see the Connecticut steamers squeeze their way through the stream, as the Connecticut passengers will assuredly squeeze their way through the world. I love all these things more than I love a cent, and therefore is it that I invest in the Union Ferry Company my spare moments and my spare cents. So much a habit has it become with me, that the man at the ferry house, by virtue of his office a stern and inexorable being, begins to know me, and on one occasion was betrayed into politeness. There was something humanizing in this touching proof of brotherhood. In the boats, too, I have a circle of acquaintances. Faces are familiar to me. People with whom I may never hold one word of converse begin to assume a hieroglyphic importance in my mind, and I try to read them. There is obviously a spell about their persons. There is the small merchant, as yet too unambitious to live uptown, who seeks respectability in the large brown houses of Brooklyn, houses which are forever being cleaned and which exhale an atmosphere of pails and dusters. The unambitious merchant has an extremely ornamental wife, who, in comparison with the useful wife of a Brooklyn storekeeper, is as an empress to an orphan. She is par excellence of the Brooklyn aristocracy, the upper 10,000 of the place. There are two daughters, also, who are educated to much sentimentality and affect rigolettes and the opera. Bless their bright eyes! I meet them often, and long for a frolicsome flirtation, just for their sakes. It would be such a delightful change for them. They would feel the joy bubbles ooze from their hearts, like beads on the surface of good wine. But it may not be. Mamma is inexorable, and the missus must laugh according to pattern, or not at all. In good time, the unambitious merchant will move uptown, and then my lady will endeavor to flourish in a soil for which she is preparing herself, and my lady's daughters will come out and captivate admirers by assuming the natural simplicity they now despise. The merchant, he is among the advertisements. Pshaw, we don't want to read them. Folds it again very elaborately, and hits upon something equally uninteresting. And so he goes on, folding and refolding, until he gets to New York, by which time he has gone through more contortions, bodily and mentally, than all the other passengers put together. Any number of pretty seamstresses adorn the cabin also, bright-eyed, industrious little witches who work 10 hours a day and live on novels and Connecticut pie. Light-hearted enough are they, and a pretty sight is it to see them, like beautiful bees swarming to their hives. To be sure, bees don't live on Connecticut pie, nor have the pretty seamstresses got stings that I know of, but accepting these weak points of the simile, it is good enough. I don't know that I observe any one more narrowly than I do the young dandy who is always to be found in the ladies' department of the boat. He is got up, regardless of expense. Indeed, a Brooklyn dandy is always something tremendous. His boots are of the most excruciating description, and suggest the idea that could he sink into them a little more, it would be an improvement. His collar is so prodigiously high that when he sits down, his head disappears. In personal appearance, he is not bad looking, except that he always seems as though he had washed himself too much. Dandy is in love with every girl in the boat, and of course expects that they in return reciprocate his passion. When weary of the faces in the cabin, I go out into the broad sunshine and gaze on the smile of nature. The paddle wheels seem to tickle the young waves, and they run away from us with a roar. The sun shines on the solitary musket of the solitary sentinel on the solitary island, and makes it gleam in the distance like a solitary joke, as it is. There are 2 or 3 gulls swaggering about and looking very blasé. These are roistering blades, who have come up from the seaboard to spend a few days in town, and, like other roistering blades, are giddy and uncertain in their movements. When they have got tired of their revel, they will go home with an imbecile attempt at gravity, and on their way take drinks at short intervals. Yonder is an apt illustration of the spirit of the age. A stalwart ship is going down to the seas. Her canvas looks as though it would burst the cords that keep it from the wind. But what avails it? The wind is dead ahead, and stalwart ship rolls a helpless infant in the cradle of the deep. Anon, an impertinent little steamer comes laughing up, ringing its bell saucily. With an ungracious bump, it pokes stalwart ship in the ribs, and then, arm in arm, or as much arm in arm as fashion will permit, sweeps down the bay with her. It cares not a fig for wind or weather, and the greater the drag behind it, the greater the effort it makes. Who shall say that there is not in our social life many apt analogies? Are there not men who, lashed to a cumbersome partner, expend their entire force that they may bear them to the sea of fashion, whither they are bound, perhaps for shipwreck, at best to return in safety? Do we not find men who burden themselves with encumbrance of houses and stores and large establishments, only that they may show their strength in buffeting the waves? And do we not sometimes find them, like this small steamer, returning to their old haunts with nothing? A pest on these uncomfortable reflections. Let me rather look on the saucy little steamer as a symbol of the young power which the world is inheriting, and which will help the old along, while itself can do better than ever yet was done. I will return once more to the ladies' cabin. I want to kick a man who is spitting on the cabin floor. Let me recommend every reader to do the same when he has similar provocation, or keep out of my ferry boat.